Hello, everyone. Welcome to our YouTube channel once again. Martin with Brent from Carbonetic. Always a pleasure to meet. Thanks again to all of our viewers who are committed to be educated about forest management, carbon offsettings, and all of the beautiful things that we are developing here in Canada with the support of our investors. Hi, Brent. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing super well. Martin, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Super nice weekend. Enjoyed the forest, went mountain biking. You know me.
Yeah, well, I spent the weekend in Canmore too. Did some fishing in Quarry Lake. The ice is just coming off, so we were really just casting, but enjoying the spectacular Rocky Mountains. And hey, that's what we love. That's what we do, right?
Yeah, and by the way, just a quick note, I got blown away on the weekend yesterday while mountain biking in Crawford Park here in Kelowna. Crossed moose with her calf. We don't see moose on a regular basis, in that part of British Columbia where I live. As you know, we usually see more bear than we see, moose. But I saw a moose yesterday. It was absolutely beautiful. So super
That's
happy about that.
that is rare in that neck of the woods. That's very, very cool.
Yeah,
And
it was a beautiful moment. That said, though, so I want to talk with you today, Brent, about the carbon offset markets. There's a lot of turbulence going on for the last few years. We were expecting it. There's a lot of fraud and abuse on the market. Multiple different bad news happened in the last few months. And at the end of the day, it's very important that the people can understand the difference between what we call a regulated, compliant market and a voluntary market. And I want the people to understand the difference. And we're going to talk about the market that we are involved in and where we are looking towards, to have our certification, which is FCOP. But before talking about the Forest Carbon Offset Protocol of British Columbia, what can you say about the voluntary market and the FCOP protocol here as the differentiator in between the two, Brent?
absolutely. So carbon offsets are generated in a very similar fashion. So we take a baseline in our industry. We take a baseline of the forest. We measure the improvements that we do, or the deferral to industrial halving, or perhaps preventing an industrial mine without a lot of responsible checks and balances. And we compare the difference between those two sort of growth patterns over 100 years, and what we can prevent or enhance is what we can credit. So it's very specific. It's very formula driven. There's over 40 pieces of very complicated math that go into generating an offset, as well as about 5 different modeling tools. So all super, super important things. But at the heart of it, we have voluntary, which is buying an offset to demonstrate that I'm a good corporate citizen. Think about, when you're thinking about demonstrating corporate citizenship, you think about 10 trees. So buy our t-shirt, buy our hoodie, we'll plant 10 trees, right? So that's them acting as a good corporate citizen. In voluntary, Shopify, Amazon, Microsoft say, look, we want to wipe out our unreducible carbon footprint. So we're going to carbon account right back from the beginning of our companies in some cases, or we're going to look at how much greenhouse gas production we're putting into the environment, and we'll voluntarily buy offsets just to demonstrate to people, to consumers, stakeholders, shareholders, buyers, that we're good folks, and that we know that our industry and our company's existence has an impact. So we will voluntarily buy offsets in quality projects, to ensure that, or hopefully quality projects,
Yeah.
to ensure that we're demonstrating our commitment to the environment. Flip side is compliance markets, and that's what FCOP. So FCOP, first of all, is in British Columbia, Canada, where we're located, and we're working on a number of FCOP projects, and that stands for Forest Carbon Offset Protocol, FCOP. And what that is it's a compliance protocol, which means that these credits will actually be sold to companies who have an unreducible carbon footprint, will be taxed based on a formula that the government's come up with, or they can defer or reduce a certain amount of that tax cost by buying forced carbon offsets. And so we're really excited about that. The math to generate the products is a little bit stricter, we feel, in the compliance market. And because we're located in British Columbia, we're very committed to the work that the BC government's doing to unlock the massive amount of carbon sequestration potential there is, in our case, with Indigenous partners across the province. And we think it's a great model. There's a lot of compliance markets that delve into different facets, not necessarily forest carbon.
Yeah.
It could be direct air capture, so we're actually going to pull CO2 out of the environment and stick the carbon underground, perhaps for future use. It could be that I electrified my fleet of buses, and so therefore I'm not using a hydrocarbon to power them, and so I can take some credit for that. Those types of compliance markets. And the good news about compliance markets is that there's a stricter regime. It's actually going through governmental approval. So we're not in this whole business of Verra or Gold Standard, which are really just third-party NGOs that have been sort of assigned, self-assigned the role of validating projects, and Verra does, I think, a reasonable job. We're not here to comment on what the voluntary market gets right or wrong. Gold Standard, American Carbon Registry, projects like that go under those third-party certifications certainly have a lot of rigor. We would say that compliance markets is one step further because this is a deferral or a reduction in actual tax due to the government. And if anything, we know there's two certainties in life: death and taxes. And everybody knows that the government doesn't mess around when it comes to taxes.
Yeah.
So believe you me, it's a very complicated and structured system to generate a forced carbon offset in British Columbia because the government's aware they will not be collecting taxes if this offset is purchased. So what is the advantage to companies to buy a compliance offset in British Columbia? There's a higher level of integrity, we believe. And then one thing I really want to particularly highlight is that FCOP, and this is the second version, which is just released, which will hopefully open up a floodgate of beautiful projects across British Columbia. There is a very detailed mandate to engage with First Nations, and it stipulates measures that could see fewer credits awarded to project developers in the event of a reversal. Why that's important is if we look at all the drama that's gone on in the voluntary market, is that there is this issue of reversals. That's that waste, fraud, abuse, that lack of trust, transparency, and reliability that we've talked about many, many times. And that's not all projects. That's only some projects. But certainly there is a credibility issue. So the BC government is really tightening up on how they deal with bad actors in the system. And I think that's actually very important. And ultimately what that means to the corporate buyer, to the individual buyer who wants to reduce their unreducible carbon footprint by offsetting, what that means is there's actually another layer of sort of rigor going into judging how these carbon offsets are being developed. So I think that's good news for the buyer. And what it means on the investment standpoint really is that we can generate more revenue from these compliance offsets because they somewhat track with the carbon tax. And in Canada, as the carbon tax escalates, so do these offset prices. And we've seen in Alberta, who has a very functional offset system that is in a compliance regime, they've done a really good job, and offset prices tend to track at a discount, a nominal discount to what the carbon tax is. And so it's ratcheting up over time, which is the idea, in that we need lots of money to deal with the problems that the negative impacts of human-caused climate change are happening. So we all know there's a lot of change, and we think FCOP is a great protocol. We've been working with the BC government. They're engaged. They want projects to happen. They're looking at this as a way to generate and stimulate economic development in areas where there haven't been a lot, to lift Indigenous nations, communities out of poverty, to provide well-paying forestry jobs. So we're super excited about this and happy to be engaged with the BC government and, of course, our Indigenous partners in FCOP.
Yeah, and it shows the seriousness of it when you see that they've been successful with FCOP V1, the first version, and one of the Great Bear Project, as per example, has been the one which still have a very good, how would I say that, recognition, like a good credibility project. Post Canada here is buying these offsets from the Great Bear Project. And now to see that the government is tightening up with a beautiful update, FCOP V2, which has been launched at the beginning of the month. And now we know it's public. It's definitely looking, to be sustainable and durable for the future. So we're very, very proud at Carbonetic, to be looking to deliver our offsets on the FCOP protocol here in BC. And as a reminder, there's a lot of mining industries as well in BC, and this is one of the industry which is very difficult to reduce actually their carbon footprint, right?
Mm-hmm. It's true. I think there are several risk factors when you live in a natural resources driven economy. Certainly hydrocarbons, so oil and gas, mining, particularly pit mining, but also underground, just due to the vast amounts of water that they consume for processing, and a lot of the heavy metals, the things that they drain out, like the arsenics of the world. Tailings ponds, these things that have legacy issues. And we can look at the Mount Poly mines, tailing ponds collapse as an example, or some of these releases into fish-bearing water courses as long-term points of damage that are hard to reverse. And then, of course, commercial forestry. Well, we're a wood-generating province, upwards of 50 million cubic meters per year, which is harvested, which is a massive number, and then that follows the trends. And of course, with wood being seen as a great sustainable product for building, people moving away from concrete and steel to mass timber, that generates more interest in our wood basket. So there's that pressure, as well as, of course, forest fires. And so when you add mining, whether it's for rare earth or gold in the Northwest Corridor, and then you throw in, things that like commercial forestry, and then of course forest fires. We've got a lot of things to try to defend against in Canada, and that's why we're proud to be working with the Casca in northeastern British Columbia, in discussions with many other groups right across the province, including the Caribou, as well as around the Fort Nelson region. So super excited to develop these relationships and just keep on pressing in to see where we can develop high quality forest offset projects that are in the compliance market, generating higher prices with a more rigorous approach.
Well, once again, thank you, Brent, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with all of our viewers today. I think it's important that the people get educated regarding what we are doing, because sometimes the perception of what we are doing can be a little bit different. And it's important that the people see that there's improvements coming in the forest. It helps the environment, and generating revenues is good for everyone in these concepts. So
I just can't, I want to jump onto that point and
do.
just emphasize that. I can't emphasize that enough, which is that we put 20% of our revenue back into forest improvement. That's aside from actually measuring the forest a lot of times for the first time, putting in forest inventory plots where there's absolutely no data to go off of. So building that trust and transparency, sharing data with the government, with our Indigenous partners, with our credit buyers, working hand in glove with Invert, who made their first purchase of credits with us, or was our first purchaser, essentially first mover. So proud of that partnership and wanting to disclose what we're doing, which is different. And the more capital that gets invested in forest protection really does make a difference. We think about the forest fires last year with 4 or 5 million hectares of forest burning up. That's a massive area, size of Switzerland, we basically lost.
Yeah.
In Canada alone, I mean, not to mention what's just happening in Texas as well as Australia. And then if we flip over into Europe, we see Turkey, Spain, France, Greece, all undergoing these catastrophic wildfires. So this is investment in protection or reduction of fuel loads. It's an enhancement of getting forests growing quicker, faster, and we need capital to do that. So it really does make a difference, and it also employs people where economic choices have been limited. So leave your ancestral home and go fight it out in a bigger city, or stay on the land, which is spiritual, and actually have a job guarding the land through forest enhancement, through making changes to promote more flora and fauna, more opportunities for wildlife, protecting the woodland caribou, precious herds of the bison, as we've shown before, and fish population, the connectivity, all these enhancements that we can do. And it really does start from data collection, knowing what we have, going back to the old Drucker quote, what gets measured gets managed. So if we know what we've got to manage, then we can really use our advanced intelligence through AI, ML, remote sensing with high quality drones, to prevent some wildfires, to get on them before they explode, to enhance some forests that are struggling, right? To do commercial spacing, thinning, pruning along routes of interface where we're unfortunately, we're going to get human caused fires, because it still happens. 40% of the fires burning in British Columbia today, of which there are upwards of 200, human caused. So we're not learning lessons, but we're able to adapt and to mitigate against that. So it's real. We invite you to come along this journey with us. Keep on watching the YouTube channel. Keep on talking with us, and we're proud to do that.
Thanks again, Brent. Thanks again for all the viewers, and see you in the next video next week.
Wonderful. See you.
See you. Bye. Thank you for watching this video. If you care about the forest as much as we do, please subscribe to our different channels and stay put for the next one.